Hello friends, welcome to another episode of Life in Eldorado. Today I want to talk about location. So it's all about when you are new in Canada, when you arrive newly, where do you stay? What do you do about your accommodation? So the trend that you find is that you would stay with someone that you already know, someone that you're familiar with, a host family, for instance. So it was for me when I newly arrived here in 2010. I was privileged to have a host family welcome me. I still remember they showed up at the airport with balloons, with hugs, It was my first time meeting this family. And they were so gracious. They opened their home. That was the way it was. And I was a good guest as well. I made sure I chipped in at home. I helped clean while they went to work. I did some cooking, but within a few weeks, I began to notice some friction, in the house. And I didn't like that. I was confused. I was stressed out. But then I didn't know how to quite navigate it because this family, they had invited us with open hands, open arms. They said, just come and we would accommodate you. But I guess the main pitfall there was that the date of our stay was not really specified. It was left open-ended. And I remember a particular day I was quite stressed, and an old friend, an old colleague came to see me. She had not seen me since I had arrived. And by the time she showed up at the door, she could tell just from my facial expression that all was not well. So she asked if she could take me for a ride. And of course, I needed a break as well. So we went on a ride, and I would never forget what she told me that day. She said, there is dignity in short visits. And I held on to that. And that day, I called my husband, who was still in England at the time, and I had to persuade him. It took a while to let him know that I wanted to get my own accommodation. He didn't quite understand why I wanted to do that, because men don't see the way women see. And moreover, he was away. I was the one in the house, living with another family. And I couldn't tell him, all the little details, because you want to keep friendships. You don't want to be the talebearer. And moreover, this family has been kind. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. They're not perfect. So I decided not to stay on the petty issues, but rather to solve the problem that was at hand, which was to find a place. So that day, the friend took me on the ride after she told me that there is dignity in short visit. That is, when you go to stay with someone, you don't leave it open-ended. You should ensure that it has a time frame, and a short time frame at that. I will say 2 to 3 weeks maximum. You should go get your own accommodation, just so you don't become an inconvenience to the good family that has hosted you. And on my own journey, it was difficult at the time because Calgary was in a boom phase and there was housing shortage in the city. So when I told my host I was looking for a place, she said, oh, with that little budget, you wouldn't find any. But as God would have it, I intensified my search. The friend that took me on a ride was gracious enough to offer me her name and her husband's name as references. So that's another thing. You would need somebody to stand in for you as a reference when you're new here in Canada. So they were gracious. They did that for me. And the challenge now came when I wanted to rent. It was tough because the landlord at the time told me there are about 5 of you wanting this same property. And I need to do some security checks on all of you. And at the time, I didn't have a job. And then I had a toddler. My case didn't look good on paper. But I just kept hope alive because I really do not want to be a burden on the good family that took me in. So eventually I was able to secure a place, and I stayed there in that condo for 3 years. The rent was about $1,100 monthly, all my bills inclusive, and the landlord was so kind. He showed up every time there was a problem in the house, and he did not increase my rent all through the 3 years. It became cramped in that little condo when we had another baby. So my husband also joined from England. So we were 4 of us in about a 400 square foot space. But in life you need to learn how to abase and abound. There's some families that have to live in one room. We have lived in a studio apartment before, so we were able to adjust. But staying there as a family of 4 didn't go down well for some of our friends. They were like, everybody has moved on. Why are you guys not buying a home? And that is the main gist of my episode today. So it's all about location. When you buy a home or you want to buy a home, the postcode is important because your property tax will be dependent on your postcode. What is the location of your house? Have you bought in a quadrant where the property taxes are quite high? You need to be prepared for all that. When you buy a house, there is associated operational and maintenance costs. Even to buy the house initially, you need to pay all the legal fees and you need to pay the closing costs. You need to be well prepared for all that. But my main gist today is about the location. Have you done your research? Are you sure that house you want to buy before you put down that big down payment? Are you sure that house will serve you for a while? If your child are just about going, maybe into elementary school, you might not need to worry as much. But if you have like a child that is going to middle school or high school, then that postcode might be a challenge, because if you have a postcode where the schools in the area are not that good, it will be difficult to be able to go elsewhere. So you want to look out for that before you run to buy a house. We did our research. It took us 3 years before we decided on where we wanted to stay, and we picked a central location which makes commuting around the city very easy. At a point we were going to school and the university was quite a distance from where we used to live, but having bought in a central location meant our commute was easier, it was shorter, and all this comes back to your life expectancy rate. You don't want to diminish it by unnecessary travel, So we did that and it's worked for us. So I just thought I'll throw that out here. This is 7 years since we purchased the house in a central location, and it has really paid off. Now we have a child going to high school and we didn't have to go far again. We were able to find a good school still in the area. We don't have to commute so long to do what we would normally do for life, that is work and schooling and even groceries, everything all around our doorstep. I remember when we were going to buy, the realtor said, "Oh, you won't want to live here. You won't want to live here because there's shops all around." But I had a baby, and at that point in time, that was exactly what I needed. So make sure that you do your due diligence before you commit to that property. And also, there is nothing making you rush. It's okay to be patient and to be modest for a while you understand the way things work in your new environment. So I hope that you've been able to pick on a thing or two from this episode of Life in Eldorado. Till I come your way again next time, it's bye for now. Thank you for listening.